Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving into some fantastic source material from a truly dedicated aquarist who goes by the name Eng. We're specifically unpacking Notes on Fishkeeping Part 283. And you know, what starts out as just a quick diary entry about a pesky algae problem actually turns into this surprisingly deep look at environmental design and really just knowing when to cut your losses. We're going to walk through the complete resequencing of a dwarf cichlid sanctuary. It's an absolutely brilliant case study, and I am so excited to share it with you all today.
But first, I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine you've put your heart, your soul, and frankly, a ton of your hard-earned time into cultivating this beautiful aquatic ecosystem, only to watch it get completely swallowed up by a stubborn, murky cloud of green that just refuses to leave. So what do you do when the green water literally wins? It's one of those situations that forces a really tough choice. Do you keep fighting a losing battle, or do you take drastic measures? And honestly, that's the exact central conflict our source material is tackling today.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The Green Water Crisis. The Unstoppable Algae Bloom. So here's how the timeline usually plays out. First, an algae bloom shows up out of nowhere over just a matter of days. Then comes that phase we all know entirely too well, the desperate application of treatments. You definitely know the drill here, pouring in those crazy expensive bottles that confidently claim to be a magical overnight fix. Well, weeks go by and guess what? Those miracle cures fail completely. The green water just sits there laughing at you. This escalating frustration is exactly what brings us to today's dramatic resolution, a complete, from-scratch tank restart.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the core motivation behind making such a drastic move. Eng writes, "The main reason for this decision was that the green water prevented me from observing the fish." You see, it wasn't just about chasing perfect water chemistry or maintaining some sterile textbook environment. The true loss here was the human element, just the simple, everyday joy of actually getting to watch your fish community thrive. When the water gets so thick and green that it entirely defeats the purpose of even having the tank, yeah, it's time to take action.
Which brings us to Section 2, a fresh start, knowing when to wipe the slate clean.
So how exactly do you pull off a complete reset? The source lays out this highly systematic and, honestly, incredibly satisfying series of physical steps. Step 1 is the purge, a total, thorough cleanup of the ruined environment. Step 2 involves a massive subtraction, completely removing these large terracotta pots that used to totally dominate the space. And then Step 3 is the foundational rebuild. This involves placing coral rock firmly at the back of the tank. Actually, Eng mentions there's an extra bag on the way to perfectly fill in the gap. It's just a very calculated, intentional teardown designed to pave the way for something so much better.
Actually, let's zero in on that second step for a quick second. Because those large terracotta pots, they are the perfect example of how good intentions can lead to really bad design. Eng points out that, sure, massive pots might be fantastic breeding grounds for certain types of cichlids, but they are totally, and I mean completely, unsuitable for the dwarf cichlids living in this specific tank. And to make matters worse, their sheer size meant they were actively blocking Eng's view of the fish, so they were functionally useless for the fish and a massive visual roadblock for the owner. Bottom line, they just had to go.
Moving right along to Section 3, Designing for Dwarf Cichlids, a Customized Environment.
And this brilliantly illustrates the night and day difference between the two approaches. The old setup was pretty flawed. It was dominated by those massive pots that blocked the view and cater to the wrong fish entirely. But in stark contrast, the new setup, it is incredibly intentional. We're talking coral rock for structure, finer sand for the base, and much smaller breeding pots. It's a massive shift from this chaotic, mismatched vibe to an environment built with absolute purpose.
Let's break down the why behind these new additions, because every single choice here is literally custom catered to the inhabitants. First up, we've got that coral rock banked at the back to create structure and keep things super clean and simple. Then, moving up to the front, Eng lays down finer sand. Why? Because dwarf cichlids absolutely love this stuff. It fits their natural behaviors perfectly. Finally, instead of those giant, view-blocking monstrosities, much smaller terracotta pots are placed up front. These act as potential breeding caves that are actually scaled to the right size for dwarf cichlids, all without ruining Eng's view of the tank. It is just a perfect harmony of form and function.
Eng wraps up this fish-keeping note with a really wonderful, forward-looking thought. Let's see how this unfolds in the coming days. And, you know, I think that leaves us with a powerful takeaway that goes way beyond just aquariums. When a situation in your own life gets a little too murky, when those quick-fix solutions you bought into completely fail, Are you willing to just wipe the slate clean? Are you willing to clear out the obstacles blocking your view, redesign your environment with true intention, and just see how a fresh start unfolds? It's definitely a fascinating question to chew on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.